Okay. Great. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on March meeting 2020 SCORI regulations change proposals. This is the second webinar related to the March meeting 2020 SCORI sessions, and this webinar will be focused specifically on the regulations voting, which is of course an important part of our standing committee. My name is Matthew. I'm a fifth-year medical student from Brussels, and I am the IFMZ SCORI director for this term. And today I am joined by Martina, who will be helping me with the webinar today. Martina, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, so hello, my name is Martina. I'm this year's SCORI General Assistant and otherwise a recent graduate from Slovenia. And I hope this next 45 minutes or an hour we'll get to learn a lot about the new proposals and finally understand them. And let's begin.
Great, thank you. Yes, exactly. We'll get straight to the chase, but what we will be talking about today is first, we will explain what regulations change proposals are, why they are important, the timeline that we will adopt for them until March meeting 2020. And then we will also go over all the proposals that have been shared with you and where you as a NORI or as a representative of your NMO for SCORI will be voting on in Rwanda in a bit less than a month. So to start off, we will first explain what regulation change proposals are and where they originate from. So we have a document called the SCORI regulations, and this is the document that states all the rules of our research exchange program. This is of course important because it is related to how we work, and in case there are any problems, we always go back to these rules to make decisions. In every single General Assembly, either the March meeting or the August meeting, we propose changes to these regulations because we think that something can be done better, or something is missing, something is too much, we change things, for example. And when we propose such a change, that's called a regulations change proposal, or abbreviated RCP. Of course, people must agree with such a change to our regulations because it has an impact on all the SCORI active NMOs and on every single exchange student. And that's why NORIs must vote on these regulation change proposals. And it must go through with a 2/3 majority, which means that if we have 60 NMOs, SCORI active NMOs, at least 40 NMOs must vote in favor of this change for it to be actually implemented. And because all these RCPs and the regulations have an impact on our entire standing committee and on our entire exchange program and all our exchange students, it is important that you as a NORI or as a representative of your NMO, you understand the implications of this RCP on your NMO and on your exchange students. And that's why it's important to read and to discuss and to understand all the RCPs before you vote on them during the March meeting. We have about 41 proposals for the March meeting 2020, and we have divided them into 4 categories, A, B, C, and X, which Martina will explain in a minute. Most of the proposals were submitted by the SCORI International team, but we also have 5 proposals that were submitted by the NORIs of BVMD Germany and BEMSA Belgium. 40 out of the 41 proposals are exclusively related to SCORI, but we have 1 proposal that is actually joined between SCOPI and SCORI, which is about the PRET regulations. This proposal will be voted both in the SCOPI sessions and in the SCORI sessions separately, but the content of the proposal is actually the same. Like we said, it's very important to read all the documents that have been shared through the NORI server because you will be voting on it. We've also shared a lot of explanations. So if you or the representative of your NMO for SCORI has not read them, please try to read them before the March meeting. We highly also recommend you to leave input and to leave comments or questions or remarks on the proposals that have been shared. We will have discussions now online. They have already started through the discussion sheets, and also in person during the March meeting. We will have time for discussions. But unfortunately, we don't have unlimited time. We only have 1 hour to discuss the proposals during the March meeting SCORI sessions. So that's why we encourage you to discuss as much as possible online, so that we don't take too much time during the March meeting itself. To explain it very shortly, we have an easy timeline for you that highlights all the important deadlines we have for NORIs up until the voting. So the proposals have been shared with you last week. So you have access to all the proposals, and it's important now to read and comment on all the regulation change proposals until the 24th of February. The 24th of February is also the deadline to submit any amendments, and I will explain in a minute what an amendment is. So that's just a change that you want to submit to an RCP. And then the deadline to submit a proxy, so someone else that is going to vote for you, is the 1st of March. And then, excuse me for the mistake, but the 3rd and the 4th of March, not February, is the RCP discussions and the RCP voting during the March meeting itself. So if you want to make a small change to a regulation change proposal, so that means just changing some words or changing the meaning of a sentence, that's called an amendment. And if you want to submit an amendment, you can do so by sending an email to scorid@ifmz.org and ga.scorid@ifmz.org before the 24th of February, and by also commenting your amendment in the discussion sheet, so that everyone is aware that you will submit this amendment, and so that we can see immediately if people agree. Then regarding proxies, normally every SCORI active NMO has 1 vote, and the NORI is the official representative of SCORI for an NMO. But if the NORI cannot attend the March meeting 2020, it's possible that there is someone else who is going to vote on their behalf during the SCORI sessions. And if that is the case, then we kindly ask you to send an email to scorid@ifmz.org to state who is going to vote for you during the SCORI sessions, so that we are aware that someone will be voting on your behalf. And the deadline for that is the 1st day of the March meeting, so the March 1st, 2020. So regulation change proposals is something quite sometimes difficult to understand because they originate in a very long document, the SCORI regulations, and we go up until the voting, and there's a lot of difficult words. So Veronica, the current RA for the Americas, has created a beautiful flowchart for you in order to understand the process of you should go through in order to understand a regulation and a regulation change proposal. I won't go over it in detail now. It is already shared in a manual, which you can read. Like I said, we have shared a manual with also this beautiful flowchart. By clicking on this link that has been shared over the NORI server, and we will share the slides with you later on, so you can click on this link, and then all the information we will tell you today will be in that manual. It is shared over the NORI server, but also here in the slides. A tip is also to attend an IFMZ plenary before the RCP voting, because they follow the same procedures that we follow, and in order to understand everything, it's easier if you already know the procedures and you see them right there. Then all the handy documents that have already been sent over the NORI server are listed here. We first have the SCORI regulations that have been changed in the August meeting 2019 in Taiwan. All the RCPs that we are proposing are of course based on this document. Then we have the overview of all the regulation change proposals, which I can show you right here. This is the overview, so a very short overview of all the RCPs that have been proposed, with the link always to the RCP document, overview document, and the discussion sheet, who proposed the RCP, what type of RCP it is, if we are adding information, if we are changing information, if we are removing information, and then the content. They are also in categories, like we said, and like we will explain in a minute. Great. Then we have the discussion document, which has been shared with you. That is the document highlighting and stating and explaining all the proposals. We have the manual, like we just explained, that you should read before the March meeting. And we have the motion and debate maze, which you can find right here. This highlights actually the process that we will go through when we are voting. And it can be a quite difficult process. That's why there is a nice flowchart to explain how RCPs are voted on. So what first happens is that we have a chairperson that will chair our RCP voting, and that person will read the motion. So they will read the RCP and it will be briefly explained. Then the chairperson asks for one NMO who wants to second this regulation change proposal. So seconding means that you are supporting this proposal. If no one wants to second a proposal, then of course it immediately fails, because that means that no one is supporting it. If there is a seconder that is found, so that means one NMO that wants to support it, then the chairperson moves to the next step, which is asking for amendments. Like we said, amendments are small changes to a proposal that has been submitted, which anyone can, of course, propose. There are then two options: either there are no amendments at all, and then we move on to asking for direct negatives. So that is actually the voting, meaning that the chair will ask, literally, is there a direct negative? And a direct negative means that you immediately disagree with the proposal and that you want it to be voted. If there is no direct negative, it's very easy. The motion passes, nemo contra, meaning no one is against. However, if someone is against the proposal, we will go to a vote. First, and that's a more complicated process, the chairperson will also ask if the person has an alternative motion to the proposal that was submitted. So that means changing actually the proposal. And if yes, then we will vote first on this alternative motion against the original motion, the original proposal. If not, there is no alternative motion, then we immediately vote. The difference between having a direct negative and not having a direct negative is that if there is no direct negative, the motion passes without voting on it, because no one says they're against them. If there is a direct negative from an NMO, that means that we vote on the proposal, and we will see how many NMOs are in favor, against, and how many abstain. So those are the general lines of how voting goes. There is also a whole process related to amendments, because if someone submits an amendment during the process of voting, then the proposer has to accept the amendment. The proposer, of course, has to accept that someone wants to make a little change to the proposal. If the proposer doesn't, then we have to vote on the amendment, between the amendment and the original motion. And also the seconder, so the person here who supported the regulation change proposal, has to accept the amendments. And if so, then it is incorporated in the proposal and we vote on it. So those are the general lines. It will be further explained during the March meeting itself, with examples as well. To give a very, very easy example, before we move on to the actual regulation change proposals, we're going to give a very easy example. So for example, Martina here is submitting a regulation change proposal that says that we want to send chocolate to all the Noris on the first day of their term with the following explanation, because Noris work very hard and they deserve chocolate. This is the RCP that Martina is submitting, and Noris have to vote on it. So what will happen according to our flowchart is that the chair will read the proposal of Martina. The chair will ask for a seconder, which means someone who supports it. Let's say we find a seconder from a certain NMO. We move on to amendments. So the chair will ask, are there any amendments? And then, for example, I say, I want to amend the proposal of Martina and say to send chocolate and cake to all the Noris on the first day of their term. Then the chair will ask if the proposer, so Martina, accepts the amendment. If she does, then that's fine. Then the seconder also has to accept the amendment, and then it is added, and it's now, then this is now the proposal we're voting on. So then we go to the next question. That means, is there a direct negative? If there is no direct negative, the motion passes immediately, and we have to send chocolate and cake to all the Noris on the first day of their term. But if there is a direct negative, if someone is against the proposal, the chair will ask if that person has an alternative motion. If so, then it will be discussed. If there is no alternative motion, we immediately vote, and the Noris have to vote on whether they agree with this proposal. So you can either be in favor, against, or you can abstain, so have no opinion. So that's the general process of how voting goes. I know it can sound quite complicated. I hope it's a bit clear now. It's in the manual. It's also written down in words, so it's a bit easier to understand, and we will also make it more clear during the March meeting itself. Martina will now go over to explaining the proposals themselves and the categories.
Okay, so Matthew already showed you a peek of the overview of the proposals. Maybe you've even seen it in your emails. And basically what we did is we gathered all the proposals that we received and changed and sorted them into 4 main categories. The categories are based on how big the change is for SCORI and for the Noris. And there's also difference on how we will vote on them. So first we have the category C that has the biggest changes, so major changes, and each of these will be voted upon separately. If we move on, then we have category B that has intermediate changes, so they are still quite big and they will be voted upon separately as well. But they are not so complicated or so new or as the ones in the category C that are the biggest. And then the last 2 categories, category A, just has very minor changes that will be voted in block. That means all together. So we will propose a motion to vote on all the changes in category A at the same time, because we do not think that they are in any way controversial or complicated. So if the Noris agree, we will do that to save time. And last but not least comes the category X, where we just included the changes that are changing the neutral language so that it's gender neutral. A lot of times it was written for he, him. So we changed it to neutral. We suggested a lot of changes for that, and also a few grammatical changes. Category X will also be voted in block if Noris agree, in order to save time. So now we will proceed to start with the first category, category C, with major changes. We will now go through each and every proposal separately, and I will explain the reasons behind it. So if we start with C1, this is a proposal for non-SCORI active NMOs to be able to send outgoings on a research exchange. It was proposed by the SCORI IT, and the reasoning behind this to actually motivate the SCORI non-active NMOs to maybe send somebody on a research exchange, and that maybe that person would later help start SCORI in their NMO. and also to give like option to everyone in the world to experience research. And this is a completely new suggestion. You can always pause and read through it in detail. I will not read through all of them because I am sure that you all can read even better than me. But basically, just to sum it up, we want to propose that every year a SCORI non-active NMO could send up to 3 unilateral contracts to SCORI active NMOs under the supervision of the SCORI IT, but they could do this only 2 years in a row. So they couldn't just send 3 students on unilateral contracts indefinitely, but just 2 years in a row. This is the proposal. There's also a lot of limitations that we put on it because it definitely has to be controlled. But basically, we want to make our research exchange program more accessible and also motivate the non-SCORI active NMOs. This is kind of similar to the SCOPI-SCORI exchange initiative, where we try to combine SCOPI and SCORI to offer SCORI to even more students who usually don't have access to SCORI exchanges or research in general. So you are free to comment on it at any time in the documents that we sent, and we will answer any questions if you may have others. So now we would just proceed to the proposal C2. This is a proposal about making the process of NMOs who are not able to host incomings due to safety issues clearer. As you obviously noticed, there sometimes come events during the year way after we sign the contracts that make it hard for a certain country to host students. A recent case is, for example, the coronavirus that is spreading in China, but it could also be war or natural disaster or any other kind of thing. It does happen, unfortunately, and we just wanted to SCORI IT proposed to better define how the procedure goes if something like this happens. What we proposed is that if a NMO is unable to host incomings due to safety or security issues, that they are allowed to sign only outgoing unilateral contracts after their first complete exchange season. But this needs to be approved by the SCORI director through email by June 1st, preceding every exchange season. The problem until now is that there was no rules on how you do that. So we wanted to make it clearer how to do that. And there's also the point of 2.4.2. In case of any major changes in safety or security issues or any other major circumstances of an NMO can be required from the SCORI director to change their bilateral contracts into outgoing unilateral contracts after reaching a mutual agreement with the receiving NMO to keep the regional outgoing unilateral contracts for a specific period of time. So basically, in simple words, this means that if something terrible happens during the exchange season, it would be possible to change all the bilateral contracts of the NMO to unilateral if they really cannot host students in that year. But this decision, again, there are limitations to it. It needs to be taken by the SCORI director in consultations with the relevant regional director, SCORI regional assistant, NMO president, and the NORI of the hosting NMO. So this would only be used in a really, really critical situations where the circumstances just don't allow for the NMO to host exchanges after the contracts have been signed. So again, if you have any more questions to this, feel free to ask either here or comment in the document. And now onwards to C3. Now we're coming to a stretch of 5 proposals that were proposed together by BMV, the Germany and BEMSA Belgium. They all relate to each other because basically what they aim to do is to change deadlines for application forms and CAs to push them forward for 2 weeks. So for all of them to be 2 weeks earlier. We will go through all of the 5 proposals separately, so you will see exactly what they want. But I also, before we start, want to mention that this has already been proposed in a similar way at the March meeting 2019, as well as August meeting 2019. So we will also share all the debates that were already had on this topic. I've also seen that The proposers already shared an email over the server explaining their stance and reasoning behind proposing these 5 proposals. So now I would just like to go in and start showing you what exactly they meant. So the first proposal would be to change the deadline for sending the AFs from 12 weeks to 14 weeks. So that means that everyone would have to send AFs 2 weeks earlier. We can go to the next proposal. It's about changing deadlines for sending CIs from 8 to 10 weeks. So again, we would all the NORIs would need to send the cards of acceptance 2 weeks earlier. So not 8 weeks before the start of exchange, but 10 weeks before the start of exchange. Next. We have a proposal to change deadlines for returning AFs due to capacity reason from 10 weeks to 12 weeks. Basically, this is done to just, you know, if you move one deadline, you kind of want to move all deadlines for 2 weeks earlier so that they are still aligned. Next is to change deadlines for returning AFs due to other reasons from 10 to 12 weeks. The same reasoning, they want to propose to change all the deadlines for 2 weeks. Next. To change deadline for sending CIs from 8 to 10 weeks. It's just in our regulations, we have 2 sections where the CA deadline is mentioned. So it's just again, changing it in the second section where we mention the CA deadlines from 8 to 10 weeks. Next is the last proposal, C8, in the group C. So this is a new proposal by the SCORI IT because we want to change the way SCORI voting rights work. We kind of want to divide all the tasks between major and minor tasks and define the appropriate investigation when NMOs fail to obtain them. So the biggest problem behind it is, if you can put the next slide, that as you can see below at 6.2.7, we currently have in our, this is the regulation that we already have, that any failure of obtaining voting rights by the deadlines defined by the SCORI regulations or the SCORI-D will result in an immediate investigation. So every NMO that doesn't get their voting rights within the deadlines will get immediately investigated by the SCORI international team. And the other problem is that the affected NMO may lose their SCORI active status from the following term. This is to be voted through a motion tabled in the SCORI meeting by the SCORI IT and voted upon by the SCORI active NMOs with voting rights. So basically what that means is that anyone who doesn't reach their voting rights should be put on vote if they should stay SCORI members or not. And the SCORI IT thinks this is fair, current SCORI IT believes this is very harsh, and also, so this is why we thought about it long and hard and proposed the following thing. If you can put the next slide. We wanted to change and sort the SCORI voting rights to major and minor criteria. So if you can see, the major criteria consist of filling in the NORI report, updating all the projects in the database, and updating the exchange conditions before the August meeting. So these major criteria we think are the most important for the SCORI program to run in a certain NMO. Then we have the several minor criteria, which are filling in the late CAs, updating the personal data, having 70% of the EFs before August meeting, and updating the explore pages before August meeting. We wanted to divide them into 2 criteria because our we wanted to define better, let's call them punishments, or just like things that happen if you don't like if you don't obtain your voting rights. So as you can see below, 6.2.7 would now change. We just wanted to formulate it in a way where it says that if they don't if they don't obtain their voting rights, they will get investigated by the SCORI IT. And now, please, the next slide. We wanted to specify what will happen if they don't get their voting rights, not just for them to be put up for vote, because we think this is a bit much. We believe that sometimes, for whatever reasons, it can happen that some tasks are not finished. So we wanted to make the following suggestions. If you don't reach one or more of the major criteria and or minor with it at 1 GA, you just get an official warning, both to NORI and NMO president. So you can see this at the top. You can read it in more detail. So if you don't reach one major criteria for 1 GA, you just get a warning. If one or more major criteria are not fulfilled at 2 consecutive GAs, so 2 times in a row, then you might lose your score reactive status for the following exchange season. Then we would vote on so only if you are unable to fulfill the 2 major voting rights criteria into consecutive GAs would you be voted on. Then we have the third option, that one or more minor criteria are not fulfilled for 2 consecutive GAs. Then you would be sanctioned with a 15% reduction of the signed contracts. We do believe that voting rights are one of the most important things you have to do as NORI 2 times a year. So we still do believe there needs to be a sanction if you don't follow the rules, and rules are there for everyone. So if you fail to fulfill it for more than 2 consecutive GAs, you will be affected by a contract reduction. And last but not least, we have what happens if you don't fulfill one or more of the minor criteria stated for, stated in the points above for 3 consecutive GAs. Then you again might lose your score reactive status. I just explained, it's best if you just read this in detail, what would happen if major or minor criteria are not fulfilled. But the thing is that we just wanted to define, not to put everyone immediately to be voted upon if they're losing their score status, but just, to give people a chance to have some idea of what happens if you don't have your voting rights. I would really advise you to read it in detail before voting. Good. So now I would like to give a word back to Matthew for the category B.
Perfect, thank you. We'll now discuss category B proposals. So this is the second category, and category B is related to intermediate changes. And again, all these proposals will be voted upon separately so that you need to take a stance on each proposal. So the first proposal, number B1, is not really a change to the SCORI regulations itself, but this is a motion to extend the SCORI strategic plan until the August meeting 2021. On one of the next slides, I will explain, because there is an ongoing process in IFMZ to align all the IFMZ strategies. So all the standing committees of IFMZ, all the regions of IFMZ are aligning the dates and the years of their strategic plan. So that's starting from August meeting 2021, all the IFMZ strategies will be aligned. So that's also the IFMZ meeting where all the strategies should end. And because of that, in August meeting 2019, NMOs voted and they gave a mandate, what we call a mandate, yes, for all the standing committees and the regions to align their strategies, which means to extend all the strategies till August meeting 2021, and to adopt annexes to their strategies. That's why we are motioning to extend the current SCORI strategic plan until August meeting 2021. The SCORI strategic plan 2016-2019 is a document consisting of 3 pillars: sustainability, academic quality, and impact. And for every pillar, there are several goals and objectives that SCORI should achieve by the year 2019. Because of the alignment of strategies, this should be done until August meeting 2021, and only the year after that, a new strategy for SCORI would be adopted. that leads us to proposal B2, which is the second part of the mandate that was received after August meeting 2019, which is that we need to add an annex to the SCORE strategic plan, because all the current goals that are in this strategic plan 2016-2019 have dates. So that means that, for example, it says that we need to achieve or that 70% of NMOs need to have pre-departure trainings by 2019, for example. But because we are extending the strategic plan until 2021, we are also trying to add an annex to the strategic plan in order to update all the goals and to add anything that is relevant and that SCORE should work and achieve by 2021. And this annex, we will explain on the next slides. This annex, first of all, contains the timeline, the new and updated timeline of the strategic plan, which is now in March meeting 2020 to adopt the prolongation of the strategic plan and to include an annex. Then the 2 following years, sorry, will be to have annual working plans. So that means just years that we're going to work on the strategic plan. After that, there will be 1 year from 2021 till 2022 to evaluate the strategic plan, because it ended, like we're motioning, in August meeting 2021. So for a year, we then evaluate it, or half a year. We adopt the evaluation in March meeting 2022, and then there is a new strategic plan that is adopted in August meeting 2022 for a period of 3 years. And from then on, all the IFMC strategies will actually be aligned and will have the exact same years. So that's why it's important, so that everything is aligned within IFMC. And the annex that the SCORE IT has prepared and already asked input from Norris on is based on the 3 same pillars as the current strategic plan, so academic quality, impact, and sustainability. And we have added goals and indicators related to all these pillars, so that there is continuity in SCORE, of course, and so that all the new initiatives that SCORE has will continue. So the first is to have, I will not go through the annex in detail. I will just say the topics that we have included. If you want to, of course, amend anything, you can do so by commenting it online and by sending an email to SCORE-D and SCORE General Assistant. So under the pillar of academic quality, we have added goals related to research camp, because that was not mentioned in the strategic plan yet. We have also added Scopy SCORE exchanges, which is an initiative where one student goes on a SCORE exchange, but the NMO receives a Scopy student, or vice versa. The third is related to hidden Scopy exchanges, which was implemented in August meeting 2019. Then it is about collaboration with IFMC programs. IFMC has a set of programs where NMOs can enroll their activities. And the last one is about scientific outcomes in research projects. Then regarding the second pillar, we have added goals that are related to social media campaigns, namely about open access, to increase the visibility through social media campaigns, which is related to it, to increase scientific opportunities of IFMC members. And with that is to organize a scientific poster fair during the IFMC GAs, which is going to be done for the first time in March meeting 2020. Then for SCORE to publish articles and abstracts in journals and conferences. And then the last one is to adopt a research competencies framework that highlights all the competencies a medical student should have for research. And the last pillar is sustainability. And for that, we have added goals related to handover, namely to have a handover manual, to promote SCORE manuals, and to also have capacity building opportunities related to research. So to have a research themed workshop in IFMC that is not related to research camp, so it's offered in a pre-GA, for example. So this is the annex that we are proposing to add, so that there is still, there are goals that we still work on until August meeting 2021. These are quite a lot of goals, of course, so that still ensures that SCORI must work and achieve a lot in the coming years. Then we move on to proposal B3. This proposal is about opening LCs. Actually, previously there was no regulation on how you open an LC for incomings and for outgoings on the Exchanges platform or the database. And so the SCORI IT would like to propose a change, namely, or actually adding regulations, namely that an NMO can add an LC by sending a request to the general assistant, because the general assistant is the person who takes care of database related issues. And then there are 2 points. The first one is related to opening LCs for outgoings, and for that there are no special requirements. And the second point is to open an LC for incomings. There must be a project that is accepted by the SCORI supervising board. The reason behind this proposal is that the SCORI IT thinks that in order to have an LC that can receive incoming students, there must be at least a research project that is accepted. Otherwise, it's impossible for an LC to receive incomings, because you cannot receive an incoming if you don't have an accepted research project on the database. And we've seen in the past that NMOs have tried to open LCs without really having projects, which is of course not possible. And that's why the SCORI IT is proposing this change. Then proposal B4 is related to the tasks of the development assistants. So of course the SCORI regulations regulate all the tasks of all the SCORI IT members. And unfortunately, the tasks of the SCORI development assistants is very short, and it's also very vague. So these are the current SCORI regulations. And according to those, the SCORI development assistants should write an end report with guidelines about development. Historically, this is not done, and technically they have to do it, but it has never been done in the previous years. And the other points are, of course, also very vague. For example, proper implementation of guidelines. That's very difficult to assess, and it's also very vague. So that's why we are proposing to add a better list of tasks for SCORI development assistants, namely to help the SCORI in achieving plans in the annual working plan, to decide on the division of tasks if there is more than one SCORI development assistant, to assist the SCORI director in achieving goals of the global priorities of IFMSA, and for SCORI, that is the access to research and research education. So in reality, the SCORI development assistants work a lot on the global priorities. To coordinate research camp, which has been a task of the development assistant for the past 3 years. To develop educational activities, which has also been a task of the development assistant for the past 3 years. To update manuals, to be the link between the SCORI IT and the liaison officer for medical education issues. To help the SCORI director and officials to submit abstracts and articles, to collaborate with SCORI regional assistants, of course, for academic quality and recognition, and then to support the SCORI director in GA preparations. So this, in our opinion, reflects very well the tasks of the SCORI development assistants, and it's important for there to be tasks that are relevant and that are specific and updated, of course, in order to know what a development assistant does. Okay. Then we move on to the next proposal, which is number B5, and it's a quite long proposal. Previously, to organize PRETs, there were capacity building, there were PRET internal operating guidelines, or IOGs, as we call them. And that is because they were aligned with the capacity building IOGs, which is a document stating all the rules that IFMSA and NMOs must follow for capacity building. So for workshops and for IFMSA events. But now that the capacity building IOGs are fixed and are sustainable, we are changing the PRET internal operating guidelines and making them as an annex to our regulations. The reason for this is that previously, the Skopje and Skori ITs could just change the PRET internal operating guidelines just by announcing it to NEOs and NORIs at any time, which is a bit weird because NEOs and NORIs should have a say in the PRET regulations, because ultimately the PRET regulations state how PRETs are organized. And that's why we are now going to remove everything that is in the SCORI regulations and in the PRET internal operating guidelines, and we're just going to add an annex to the SCORI regulations that highlights all those internal operating guidelines, all the regulations that were previously all chaotic, and we're moving it to one centralized document that is annexed to the SCORI regulations, and that is also annexed to it. So that means that NORIs actually can amend it, and the SCORI IT as well. Important to also know is that it is a joint proposal with Skopje, so Skopje will motion to add the same annex to the regulations, because PRETs are organized jointly between Skopje and SCORI ITs. I won't go through the detailed PRET regulations, as it is a 5-page document describing all the rules on how to conduct a professional and research exchange training. And they are also aligned with the IFMZ capacity building internal operating guidelines, because that's important in terms of deadlines. And the PRET regulations has 5 chapters, which are listed here, but I highly invite you and recommend you to read the PRET regulations annex before voting on them. Then we have proposal B6, which is the last proposal related to the category B, and which is related to the language of a research exchange. So the current SCORI regulations say that an exchange student must have adequate knowledge of English, the native language of the host country, or the language agreed upon in order to carry out a research exchange. The SCORI IT thinks that this is not very clear, and also not right, because every exchange student must be able to speak English, as it is the language of research. Furthermore, all the project forms that LORIs and NORIs submit are in English and must be approved in English. So in order to regulate this in a better way, we propose to change it into 2 points, with the first point being the exchange student must have adequate knowledge of English. And then the second point, that a research exchange can actually be conducted in the native language of the host country, but only after an agreement has been made by all the relevant parties, which is the incoming student, the hosting LORI, and the tutor. So of course, everyone must agree that the research exchange is carried out in a different language. So these were the category B proposals, and then Martina will continue with the category A and X proposals.
Okay, just so a short intro for category A. Right now we went through B and C. They were the big and long ones and the most important ones. You will notice right away that category A is, they are like the changes in content of the SCORI regulations, but they don't have much meaning for our work in general. They're just corrections of some little things need correcting, or maybe something that we always did in a different way. So I will go through them a bit more quickly. You can always pause and just read them more in detail. I will just explain the idea behind each of them, because now we have 18 proposals and we don't want to make this webinar way too long. So we will start with the first one. A1 is about adding the SCORI development assistants under the people who have access to the database, because they do have access, so it needs to be also written in our regulations. Makes sense, right? So A2 is about when a new animal becomes SCORI active, they need to first create their exchange conditions that are approved by the SCORI D after consultation with the SCORI international team. The truth is that SCORI D never consults the whole IT, because the whole IT doesn't have in-depth knowledge about a certain animal in a certain region. So we want to change that to just that the SCORID would consult only with the relevant SCORI regional assistant, because this is the person who has the best understanding of how an animal would work in their region. So just to change it, because it's never consulted with the whole IT. Then we have A3. It's just about renaming. Currently, we have a point where we name our research project a research training in brackets SCORI project. This is just not how we name it, so we want to change it to a research project, like you see below. Just a simple renaming. A4. We just wanted to add, do you remember the point about when we said that if an animal has a major like if the activation has to happen, for example, due to any reason, maybe due to voting rights loss or anything else, animals considered as not SCORI active must be informed of their deactivation by the SCORI regional director. And now we wanted to define how they will be informed, because it was not defined before and that was missing. So how? By CCing the regional director, the SCORI regional assistant, and then they can proceed with the deactivation. Okay, so next, yes, we have A5. The responsibilities of the SCORI-D. We want to just add a little thing that the SCORI-D should manage the SCORI interface of the database. Now we want to add in collaboration with the VPPRC, so Vice President for PR and Communications, because this is the responsible executive board member for everything that is database and management related. So he already helps with the SCORI interface, so he should definitely be included in he or she, now it's currently a he, they should be included, this person should be included in the regulations. Then we have A6. Again, responsibilities of the SCORI-D. While reading through the document in detail, we saw that the SCORI-D should write a financial report for the August meeting, but this is never done. There's no finances to write a report about, so we want to remove the financial report, but just keep the part that actually does happen, to inform the IFMC Vice President for Finances about the amounts of outgoing contract side for each animal, because this is important to calculate the fees of the animals to like be in the IFMSA, because this is realistically what is done. There is no financial report that SCORI-D writes. Okay, so then let's proceed to A7. We just want to rename plan of action to annual working plan, because there is no plan of action, we don't call anything that we do a plan of action. SCORI-D prepares an annual working plan by in accordance with IFMSA constitution and bylaws. So we just want to make this in alignment with the constitution and bylaws of the IFMSA. Next, we have A8. It's just about restructuring the paragraph a little bit. So you can just read it for yourself. We want to just move the manual and research exchange from point 3.2.21 to point 3.2.18. Basically, we want all those 4 documents to be shared with all NORIs at least 1 week before the GA. So which animals are SCORI active, which animals are under investigation for loss of active SCORI membership status, and animals with voting rights. And we want to add the manual and research exchange on that. Good, so next, A9. We want to add something to the proposals, things that we've been doing, because in accordance with GDPR, so General Data Protection Regulation laws, we need to remove all projects that are older than 1 year, which are not used. This is what also the tutors sign or agree upon when submitting new projects. So we want to do this, we have to do this in accordance with the GDPR. We already, our supervising board already deletes all the obsolete projects once a year. So each March after the March meeting approximately. So we just want to add it to the regulations as well, because this is still not there. But this is something that we actually do for 2 years now already. Okay, so next we have A10. Under the, we want to rephrase the term IFMSA SCORI meetings because this is not really something that we use. This is in regards to regional tasks of regional assistants. So we want to just restructure it to that the regional assistant should attend the regional meeting of their region and Neo-Nori weekend if applicable, and when possible, other SCORI related workshops in their region. Because this makes it more clear, we don't really have IFMSA SCORI meetings as such. Next. We have A11. Like the SCORI GA will always support and has to always support the SCORI director in the preparations of general assemblies and the sessions. And we want to define that clearly in the regulations as well. So we want to remove if needed because it is always needed. The workload is just really big. So we want to make sure it's clear to the people who want to be general assistants in the future. Next, A12. So we want to just clarify which steps the SCORI director should go through in case they want to remove or suspend a SCORI international team member. So we want to add that the SCORI should go through the steps not alone, but with the help of regional directors if it's for a SCORI regional assistant, because regional assistants are parts of two teams at the same time, parts of SCORI international team and the regional international team. So both directors, SCORI director and regional director should be responsible for it and do this together. And then we just have some change of language to gender neutral, and also adding the point C to inform the IFMSA executive board about the situation. This is not defined yet. And we want to change that you don't consult the team of officials, but you want to inform the executive board of the situation. And this is how it's currently done. And we think it's the better way. So then we have A13. We want to change because it says that currently the exchange student is obliged to attend the program regularly. And regularly is a very, very broad term, and we just wanted to define it a bit more clearly what the regularly means. So we just said that the student must attend at least 80% of the working hours of the project, or the number of hours stated in the exchange conditions of the NMO, to be more precise. Next, A14. We wanted to define a better way of because when we have SCORI terms and conditions, these are very important document. We want to make all of them mandatory for students to sign and upload in their card of documents before they go on the exchange. So we want to, we just want to change it from that the terms and conditions must be confirmed before sending the AF. Confirmed is again very broad term. So we added confirmed by uploading a signed version in the card of documents. This would also mean that SCORI terms and conditions is like a must upload document for every NMO. So this would be then mandatory for all students going on an exchange to sign and upload before sending their AF, which we think is necessary because it's important that they read and agree to the terms and conditions in case something goes wrong afterwards. Then next, A15. We want to change the proposal that only electronic AFCAs and CCs are accepted because we wanted to define it better that they should be sent over the exchange platform. But at the same time, we do know that sometimes this just isn't possible due to technical issues that cannot be resolved so quickly. So we wanted to add a new point called 8.2.1, that in case of technical issues, those documents can be sent via email to the respective NORIs, but within the same deadlines as the ones on the exchange platform. So there is no excuse why you wouldn't receive a CA or AF by your deadlines, and as well as CC. So this is just something that we wanted to make more clear in the regulations as well, to reflect the reality of our work. So next, A16. We wanted to add, because we had a paragraph before in the category C about NMOs facing major circumstances, with safety issues and so on, that they are not, they don't fall under this criteria of having, of not being able to have more than 40% of your contracts being unilateral. So if your NMO like has a situation that is described in the paragraph 2.4, for example, right now a big coronavirus outbreak, you're not in this criteria that you must not have more than 40% contracts unilateral. This doesn't apply to you. So just to, if the point 2.4 will be accepted for NMOs facing major circumstances, then we would also like to make sure they would not suffer by this regulation, to exclude them from here. Okay, next, A17. We just want to rephrase how the contracts are signed online, because currently our regulations say that the contracts have to be registered, but we don't register contracts. Like, what is that? What is registering contracts? So we just want to change it to that contracts must be requested and accepted on the exchanges platform. It's just a change of meaning of one word, nothing else changes in how we do our work. And the last one, we have A18. It's also a bit important one that could save us a lot of time in the future. We want to add a brand new proposal that goes that all grammatical and renumbering changes to the SCORI regulations can be done by the SCORI director between GAs. These changes should be sent to the NORIS immediately. Our report listing all the suggested changes will be presented at the next General Assembly for adaptation by the SCORI Working Committee. Upon adoption of the report, the SCORI director can make the changes. So this is just to make sure that we don't need to vote upon each little grammar thing separately, so that the little grammar or renumbering changes could be done without having to motion each of them separately during GAs. This would just, I guess, save time for both NORIS as well as for IT. This is also aligned with the IFMSA bylaws, point 1.27. So it's also in the IFMSA bylaws, it is allowed for the EB to change grammatical mistakes and renumbering, and then the NMOs just confirmed it at the next GA. Okay, so this is all from category A with minor changes, and now we have the last category. We will be really quick because the last category just has gender neutral language and grammatical errors. So it will be voted together in block. We will propose that all of the proposals for category X and category A will be voted together if the NORIS will agree, to save time, definitely. So let's go quickly through the category X. We just want to change he to they in the X2. Yeah, let's go to X2. He's to their. Next, X3, he's to their. X4, he is to they are. Next, just he's to their. Again, gender neutral language in X6, from he is to their. X7, again, he's to their. Next, X8 is a bit longer, but I just here you just see the proposed regulations. So there was a lot of not gender neutral language concerning students. So we just changed it that it's all gender neutral, the green words. Next. And that's it. We have gone through all of the 4 categories. Again, just to sum it up, category C and B are the most important ones. This is something you need to read in detail, and we will vote on each of them separately, while category A will be voted in block, which has just minor changes, and category B is just grammatical and gender neutral language corrections that will also be voted in block. And now I will give a word back to Matthew to finish up.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So we went through all the 41 proposals we will be voting on during March meeting. I hope you understood all of the proposals. There's a lot of them, so please make sure that you read through them carefully. We went through them quickly, but we highly urge you to read them at your own pace, and to also comment in the discussion sheets that has been shared on the Nori server previously. If you have any comments, if you don't agree, if you do agree, you can also comment. And if you have any questions or remarks, the Score IT and Noris can look at them. So to just finish up, we would like to remind you of the timeline. So all the RCPs have been shared. They have also been explained here. So now your job as either a NORI or a representative of SCORI for the March meeting 2020 in your NMO, your job is to read and to comment on all the regulation change proposals by the 24th of February, to submit online amendments if you want to amend a proposal. Note that you cannot send a new proposal. That deadline is passed. So you can only amend a current proposal if you wish to. The deadline to send the proxy. So if you are not attending March meeting as a NORI, but someone else is representing you, the deadline is the 1st of March. And then, again, apologies for the mistake, but the RCP discussions and the RCP voting will happen on the 3rd and the 4th of March. And then we have the documents that you should have at all times, which is the SCORI regulations after August meeting 2019, the overview of all the proposals, the discussion sheet or the discussion Google document where you can comment and you can discuss and leave any input you might have, the manual on how to survive regulation change proposals that highlights and actually explains everything we've explained today, but in words, and then the motion and the debate maze that has been explained in the beginning and explains the voting process. So this is it regarding regulation change proposals. If you do have any questions, either here on Zoom or on Facebook live stream, you can ask so now, and we will be answering your questions right now. If there are no questions, we will end the webinar, and we will again invite you to read all the regulation change proposals and to comment and to leave input wherever you want. Make sure that if you are a NORI and you are not attending March meeting 2020, you give all the relevant information, manuals, overview of all the proposals and the discussion sheet to the person who will be representing you, because they will be needing these documents. We don't want to come to March meeting and not have people not prepared, because at the March meeting, during the voting, we will not be discussing. To be very clear, there is no time for discussion during March meeting 2020. There will be a chairperson, and they will shut you up if you try to discuss, because the voting is only for voting and not for discussion. So we expect everyone to be aware of all the proposals beforehand. I don't see any questions. If there are any questions left, you can still ask. If not, we will then end the webinar right now. Thank you all for attending. The webinar will be made available on YouTube, and it will be shared over the NORI server and in the SCORI Facebook group. It is at all times available already in the SCORI Facebook group. So if you want to rewatch it, you can at all times. We highly invite you to rewatch it if you have any questions or if it went too fast. So thank you very much to everyone who attended. Thank you very much to Martina to co-facilitate this webinar with me. We hope that we have fruitful discussions online and during the March meeting, and that, of course, the RCP voting goes as smoothly as possible. Martina, do you have any last words?
Maybe just one more tip. What helped me a lot. The whole voting procedure can seem quite complicated or like frustrating, but if you go to an IFMSA plenary before. They used the exact same voting procedure. So it's really like you can be there, see it go a few rounds, and it will be much more clear to you when you see it in action. We will also like have a test run at our when we vote. So don't be afraid, but just really the best thing you can do to prepare yourself is to actually read and understand the proposals, to understand what you're voting on, and that you're doing an informed vote. So that's all from my side. I hope this webinar was helpful to you, and just contact us if you have any other questions at any time before the GA.
Perfect. Then thank you everyone for attending. And we look forward to seeing you during the March meeting 2020. Thank you very much and have a nice day and have a nice weekend.